Max Clark. Let's talk about evaluating new providers and how we add them to our portfolio, whether we choose to offer them to our customers or not. This stems recently, we had a data center company or bare metal provider reach out and ask, hey, what do we need to do to get in your portfolio? We'd love to work with you, basically. Now, there's only so many data centers on the planet. I mean, new ones are being built, but this isn't like a huge, size, right? Like when you come into major markets, let's just use Los Angeles for a little bit. Los Angeles as a data center market, and by the way, I'm going to include Orange County. And I mean, technically it's not, Orange County and LA are completely different animals. When you look at the LA market for data centers, the center of the LA universe is downtown Los Angeles. And for co-location, really that is One Wilshire, 624 South Grand. And by the way, this is a byproduct of deregulation and how, CLEC start and the birth of the internet and all these different things. So some of this stuff is just geography and availability and, hey, you got a building that's a couple blocks away from AT&T's wire center, a serving wire center, and it has an empty floor and it's cheap and nobody wants to be in it and you can get fiber to it really easily and boom, now you have a dominant carrier hotel for, one of the densest interconnection points on the planet, and that is One Wilshire. So you look at these buildings, and so if One Wilshire is the center of the universe in downtown Los Angeles, everything else exists within a certain radius and proximity to this building. 600 West 7th is a converted department store that was converted into data center space. And it was, I think originally done by an entity that, of course, and basically this other consistency in telecom and data centers is when most of these were converted or built, the original operator went bankrupt. That's a good example of that. Exodus, right? Exodus built most of the original data centers that are still used today. Exodus goes under, is acquired. I'm trying to think if I can remember the exact chain of operations here. So I think it's Exodus to Cable and Wireless to Savvis to CenturyLink, which becomes Lumen, which then gets spun off to Cyxtera, which then is bankrupt and then merged by private equity with Evoke. And by the way, technically there's another transaction in there with another company called Softwire. Now you're talking about a data center. And by the way, this is true for all these original data, Exodus assets. So I don't care what market you're talking about. These facilities have phenomenally long useful lives as long as you're maintaining the plant. They might not be 1,000 watt per square foot density, but who cares? In terms of what the owner and the operator of that data center is getting out of them, they're making money on these facilities. They're making a ton of money on these facilities, let's be real. Back to Los Angeles. So Los Angeles is quirky because of two things. So first, you have the center of the data center universe is One Wilshire because that's where the network interconnection is. Then you get pressure based on cost for floor space, cost for the building, cost for power availability, and then taxes and taxation overhead, right? So most operators then have a decision to make where they're either converting and doing stuff in downtown LA. So in downtown LA, we have the One Wilshire building, 624 South Grand. We have 600 West 7th Street, converted department store. And then a lot of EXO Communications operations were in this facility. Then it becomes Equinix is on the top floor. So 600 West 7th is really Equinix. We have level 3 built out their gateway at 818 West 7th. We have another major data center process happen, 1200 West 7th, which was a cache vault and a Pitney Bowes mail processing facility. So already raised floor, generators in the building. 1200 West 7th is where, MySpace, for instance, had the bulk of their operations. And then while this is going on and people are trying to build data center in Los Angeles, you have Irvine facilities coming online. So Exodus builds their facilities. There's the original OC1 facility, which is no longer around. You had OC2 come on in Gillette. EXO has a facility in Santa Ana that gets built. El Segundo. Why El Segundo? Different power grid. So Edison versus DWP, cheaper building. It's easier to acquire the actual building itself, and probably one of the best tax bases for a business to operate in the LA Metro versus Los Angeles City. Going to El Segundo is a great thing for you if you're actually looking at and thinking about taxes. So Exodus builds a facility at 200 North Nash. We have Equinix comes down, 1920 Maple. There's a cluster of data centers that all exist right around the same area. Also in Los Angeles, we can go a little bit deeper. We can talk about Burbank and facilities being built on Burbank. Same thing, right? Land, power, cost. Now, the buildings we're rattling off are all what I would consider the preeminent locations. Metro Media Fiber starts building a facility, which then becomes AboveNet, which then goes through bankruptcy, then is acquired by 365 Main, and this is 2265 El Segundo, 2265 Rosecrans. It's a little hazy. So again, built, bankrupt, bought, rehab, built, maintained, like these things just kind of trade. Anyways, okay, so these are all what I would say like the good buildings, right? Good operators, good infrastructure, people have spent a lot of money. And then you get into buildings, which are the adjacencies. And I had a friend years ago referred to it as ghetto colo, so I will refer to these things forever for the rest of eternity as the ghetto colo locations. I won't name the buildings by numbers, but if you're around the markets, you'll understand what I'm talking about. And these are buildings where it was, hey, we just happen to be right next door to one of these buildings, and we can run, conduit out one window, down across the mechanical floor, up through another window and get into the building. Now we have conduit access, or there's plenty of conduit in the street and we can just tap into it and we can provide service, and we can offer a low cost data center option next door or a block away. And usually what you see with these buildings is small floor plates. They're not large buildings. They weren't designed to be data halls. They don't have generators, or they have one generator for the entire building. Not a lot of power provided to the building, relatively low power provided to each suite. And operators that exist in this space are really trying to come to market with a cost per kilowatt that is so far under market for that metro that when they provide, put their margin on it, that when a customer looks at this location and says, hey, this building isn't ideal, but it's so much cheaper, we're going to go here instead. So dubbed 20 years ago to me as the ghetto colo. And this exists, I'm picking on LA just because it was fresh in mind and we were just doing stuff out there. But this exists in most major metro markets. This is true in New York. It's true in New Jersey, San Francisco, Seattle, Chicago, Atlanta, Miami. Go to any major market where you had heavy interconnection and heavy data center deployment, and you see this stuff. Now, 10-minute segue aside, right? We really jumped the shark on that one pretty good. When we get an inbound inquiry of hey, we're we're a bare metal company, we're a data center company, we're a co-location, we have a private cloud, whatever the thing is, we're going to look at it and we're going to say, okay, do we know you? No, we don't know you. Why do we not know you? Okay, are you operating your own facilities or are you using somebody else's facilities? Okay, what facilities are you in? Are you in a tier 4 major data center or not, right? And it's the or nots that are really interesting, because usually the conversation is, you get pitched this like, we're this phenomenal, like top tier, unbelievable, best operator on the market. And then you look up the facility and like, yeah, but you're in a total POS building that has a single generator that I know is blown up 3 times. And why would somebody do this, right? And by the way, let me actually put this out here, right? I'm not knocking on this in terms of a selection process. I've joked about this for a long time. I mean, joke's not the right word. There is a massive price differential between going, when you talk about like Uptime Institute tiering, if you want to be in a tier 4 data center and the requirement to be in a tier 4 data center, it is expensive. It is expensive to build that facility. It is expensive to maintain that facility. It's expensive to have generators in that. Everything about that facility is expensive. There is a reason why it's a tier 4 data center, right? Like, you're buying into that approach. If you have infrastructure that doesn't require to be in a tier 4 data center, like, absolutely don't put it in a tier 4 data center. If you're looking for a cheap place to go put your, fill in the blank, whatever it is, you can do this thing a lot cheaper. I would get into a thought exercise with you of like, how much redundancy do you actually even need at that point? Like if you're not going to be in a tier 4 data center, do you need diverse fiber entrances? Do you need diverse power entrances? Do you need diverse grids? Do you need redundant generators? Do you need redundant UPS systems? Do you need redundant air conditioning? Like, what do you need and what do you not need? And what this all impacts into is a statistical probability of outage per year. So on a given time frame, how many seconds, minutes, hours of downtime can you accept with this facility, and what are you trading in terms of cost? That's all we're really getting into here, is we're just talking about trading cost with a statistical probability of an outage over what duration of time. And just because there's a statistical probability of an outage doesn't mean that the outage actually occurs. It could not at all. You could run forever and like everything's fine, or you could have more outage than what the statistical probability actually is. And when I say that, I mean it like, and by the way, this weird black swan events happen at, tier 4 data centers. What's a crazy one? Drunk driver crashes into a utility pole feeding into a data center, and the fire department walks into the data center and says, you have to power off your data center so we can cut the occupant of the car out of the vehicle, right? And the data center is like, it's already cut over to generators running their own thing, and they're like, what do we do? They couldn't, it's like, the authorities are now telling you have to do this thing, period. Like, was that a statistical probability that you have to worry about, that kind of event happening? No, of course not. Like, it's relatively unusual, right? Like, I can think of one or two stories like this, but stuff happens. I've seen utility substations blow up, not like a terrorism bomb blow up, but like a something that literally explodes, a transformer explodes. And to the utility's credit, they repaired that extremely fast. But then you get into what is your actual outage duration that you can take. Is the 8-hour repair cycle for the utility to fix that substation acceptable to you or not? And if it's not, make plans for it on the other side. Lower Manhattan had a significant weather event that went through, and while a lot of buildings had generators on the upper floors, they had diesel storage tanks and pumps underground. And when it was flooded and their pumps couldn't work and their diesel storage tanks were underwater, people had to run 5-gallon buckets. When I say run, like, you're not running, but like people physically carrying 5-gallon buckets of diesel fuel up flights of stairs in order to keep the generators running to keep the facilities on. Does that fit your risk profile or not? Like, what would happen, if that facility just turned off? Like, does it fit your risk profile? What rubs me the wrong way is this presentation of something that's not. Like, if you're a service provider and you are a value, low cost, we're coming to the market, we're going to give, our positioning is a product that is going to be 50% of the competitor because we're making these decisions in order to capture and to attract a different segment of the market. Just lay that out up front. I 100% respect and appreciate that. Just lay it out up front. This is what we're doing and why we're doing it and what we're focused on. And it's fantastic. If you come to us and you say, hey, we're the best thing since sliced bread, and we do a little research on you and we find out that you're not, we're not going to continue the conversation anymore because you've started with a falsehood, you've started with a lie. And if you're lying about things that we can discover very easily, what are you not telling us that we have to dig into farther? And is it worth it? And again, for us, when we start talking about helping our customers through this process, the risk reward, there's no value at that point. There's no point where it's going to be interesting or valuable to us to take that risk where we can't have an open conversation. If I can have an open conversation with a customer and say, hey, there's this product in this market that might be great for you, but by the way, there's these trade-offs, but for these trade-offs, you're going to have a 50% reduction in your cost. Is that something that's interesting to you? And then they can make an informed decision. Like, that is a great conversation. Like, fantastic. Maybe they come back and they say, yes, we're good with this. Or maybe they come back and they say, no, we're not good with that because we've decided these other things. And it's like, absolutely, totally understand. Let's go a different direction, And sometimes people maybe don't really know the answer to that until they're actually confronted with it. Like, until you actually have to make the decision and get ready to sign, like actually contemplating signing a contract, you might think that you're in one bucket and then you find out that you're just in another bucket. And that's okay too. So, summarizing, wrapping all this back up and circling around, whatever you want to call it, too long didn't read. The point of all this stuff is, especially in the data center world, just be straight up, and when you're looking for data centers, it's really easy to evaluate and look at these things, look up their history, and know what their operations are and figure out what's going on. If you're talking to a data center and you find out that their entire facilities team is ex-Submariner nuclear, engineers, like they probably have the thickest book of SOPs that you've ever encountered in your life. And then the only question that you have is, how long has that facility been online? And have they encountered every edge case that you can possibly ever think of? And then there's going to be an SOP for it, and they've got preventive maintenance, and you're great, and things are wonderful. I'm Max Clark. If you have any questions, comments, let me know below, and we'll get back to you.
Feel it.